I keep, yeah, so embrace, the thought came to me about embracing change. I've been going through, obviously, we've all been going through a lot of change with the pandemic the last few years, and now we're going through change with the wars and Afghanistan and now Ukraine, and um, our financial situation for a lot of us has changed. So a lot of us have changed jobs or working from home. It's been crazy, right? And a lot of people are really struggling. So uh, I wanted to talk about how embracing change is part of our practice, right? It's an important part of our practice. Um, yeah. Here's Norman Fisher. He says, change isn't just a fact of life we have to accept and work with. To feel the pain of impermanence and loss can be a profoundly beautiful reminder of what it means to exist. Right? So I'm going to assume that everybody knows what change is, what change means. It's like to make form, nature, content, course of events. It is no longer the same as what it was before. But here's Heraclitus, Greek philosopher. He says, change is the only constant in life. Change is the only constant in life, right? So what's really interesting is on one side of the spectrum, change is the only thing we can actually count on in life, right? And then the other side of the spectrum, we totally resist change and we struggle with change. That's human nature. If you study neuroscience, they'll tell you how the brain, what is the part of the brain I had written down here somewhere, um, that stores experiences. Yeah, is it the hippocampus? It's the basal ganglia. It routinizes behavior, so it stores certain behavior sequences in the basal ganglia so that they become automatic. That's how we can drive home and not remember how we drove home. We can walk across a room without focusing on how to walk, right? Because of all these behaviors that we do often enough, they become rote. And then we don't, yeah, automatic programs. So we don't have to think about them anymore. Um, so on one hand, this is how we're routines. So we're brushing our teeth, we're taking showers, we're doing things totally unconsciously without mindfulness, right? And then there's the part of the brain, I guess the amygdala, is looking for constant threats in our environment. And as soon as, like, let's say that we come in this room regularly. If we walk in and things are different, like the tables and chairs aren't in here, or that somebody's standing in here we're used to coming in here having it the same way every time. Our amygdala will start to fire, and we'll get feeling threatened in some way, or we'll get upset. What's going on? What's wrong? Because there's change. So we're wired to see change as a threat, right? And yet, change is the only thing we can count on. Do you see the rub there? Right? Um, Everything in our environment is constantly changing. The air is changing, our body is changing, our moods are changing, um, the universe is changing. We're actually in movement. It's constantly moving. Everything. Uh, there's nothing staying the same. Nothing's, not even the most solid mountain is staying the same. It's changing too, slowly, but it's changing. Um, yeah, and yet the mind sees change as a threat or as a problem, right? Um, yeah, so it's trying to keep everything the same. We want to keep our routines the same. We want to keep our house the same. We want to keep our favorite things the same. That's pretty normal for a lot of people. But it's a problem, right? Because everything is. Um, the Buddha said that the reason why they're suffering and unsatisfactoriness is because everything's constantly changing. So we are counting on things staying the same that are constantly changing. And the more we cling to things being the same, the more we're going to suffer. Right? And that's why we're constantly dissatisfied. Anytime we put our energy or our expectation or our love and clinging to anything in this world, in the conditioned realm, we're going to suffer because everything in the conditioned realm is changing. There's a girl that I've been working with at the recovery center who's struggling because one of her favorite people left the recovery center, and now she doesn't feel like anybody likes her, and she doesn't know how to. So she was happy before, but now she's not happy. And I was telling her, I was like, so you're putting your happiness in the hands of other people. Do you get that? And she was like, what? I said, so as long as you are, you have other people who like you, who are reflecting back to you that you're okay, then you're happy. But as soon as they leave, you're no longer happy, right? So you're putting your happiness in other people's hands. And she's only 18 years old, so she had a hard time getting it, but eventually she got it. So when we put our happiness in relationships, we put our happiness in our finances being a certain way, and our parents living forever, our health staying the same, right? Our body not breaking down and staying limber and healthy forever. You've got beautiful red hair. Your hair is staying red. I used to have red hair. Used to. Right? Used to have hair. Right? So we can't count on anything in this conditioned realm because it's going to change. There's on the internet, I found these letters to God that children wrote, and they collected all these letters to God. And this one little girl said, "Dear God, instead of letting people die and having to make new ones, why don't you just keep the ones you already have now?" Right? Yeah. So it starts very young, very young. I noticed my grandson, he really struggles with change. He doesn't like it. Yeah, it's really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for us to be truly happy and free, we have to look at our relationship to change and change our habit from bracing against change, resisting change, to um, actually embracing change, seeing it as the nature of how things are.
People live in a realm of permanence,
Mm-hmm.
and just be like, "You're my best friend forever." It's like, well, we're not going to be around forever, or we're going to heaven, we'll be there forever.
Yeah,
it's always forever.
Everything's forever.
I'll never forget this. It's like, well, you'll be dead.
I'll be happy forever. I went through this leadership training. It was a 6-month training. It was really intensive. We got together almost every weekend. We did all these huge challenges together, like going out and getting everyone in a restaurant to sing a song together. It was crazy, the things that we were challenged to do. But we really connected, the whole group of us. And then we had our last weekend together, and we did skinny dipping and all kinds of crazy fun things. Had the best weekend celebration, our last weekend together. And then they were like, let's have a reunion every year. Right? So they had us go to the same place we had before, and people were trying to force and control the next year's weekend to be exactly the same as the year before. And I'm just sitting there going, this feels really weird and messed up. This is not right. Because we weren't the same people as we were a year before. The situation wasn't the same. But people were trying to force fit it to be the same because they wanted to feel that permanence, that good again, right?
It's like clinging to that memory and trying to make it real again.
Exactly. So this is the Buddha. He said, everything is changeable, everything appears and disappears. There is no blissful peace until one truly understands this. And 12th century Japanese master Dogen said, practice isn't the way to cope with or overcome change and impermanence. It is the way to fully appreciate and live it. right? So how can we see change as the constant, right? And how can we dance with change and work with change and accept it? Um, it kind of reminds me of riding a bike. You know, when we first tried riding a bike and we were falling down, and eventually what we learned to do is this constant adjusting so that we can stay upright.
Mhm.
You know, we do the same when we're walking. If you do walking meditation, you'll notice your leg muscles are constantly contracting in different ways to keep you standing upright. But that's kind of like what life is like. We're constantly adjusting to this moment and this moment and this moment because it's constantly changing. But people don't see that. The mind doesn't see that, right? So our practice in being mindful is to actually grasp this, grasp impermanence, grasp that everything is from one moment to the next. It's not the same. I was in a long retreat. I've done a lot of long meditation retreats. And I got into this state of deep samadhi concentration. And it was amazing because I felt every single sensation in my body. And it was like, I could feel like, oh my God, these tiny wild sensations all over my body. I could feel all these movements in my body. I felt like I could sense about 100 different sensations a second. You know, it was just happening all so fast. And it was wild. But that is actually how the body feels, but we're not aware of it. You know, that's what's actually happening in the body, but we're not aware of it. But when we get mindful and deeply concentrated, we start to be aware of all of the constant flux of change. So how can we be in the midst of all this change without the mind freaking out, right? Um, First, we get used to that this is a reality. Everything's constantly changing. And the second thing is that the more we meditate and the more we practice being mindful, the more we notice that there's a still place. There is a place that's still, that is not affected by the constant change. And it's the awareness itself, right? Awareness doesn't change. What awareness is aware of is constantly changing. But awareness itself is not changing. Awareness is, when we can sit back in awareness and just notice all the constant change, we find that still quiet place within, or wherever awareness is located. I don't know. But it feels very peaceful to rest in awareness. Um, yeah. So, impermanence, all conditioned things are of the nature of vanishing and of being born. That's the last thing the Buddha said before he died. So keep working diligently towards your own awakening, is what he said. Understanding the nature of change actually motivates us to want to practice more, right? Once we really get that, oh, wait a minute. I can't stay young forever. I'm not going to be happy forever. My moods are constantly changing. My body's constantly, everything's constantly changing. There's nowhere to stand. There's nothing to hold on to. We can either get really depressed and hopeless, or we can start to practice to realize that there is a place that is not changing. It's our Buddha nature. It's our awareness itself. But so many of these Buddhist teachers over the years are constantly throwing all this negative stuff at people to try to get them to realize impermanence, anicca. Um, Here's Stephen Chbosky. He said, things change and friends leave. Life doesn't stop for anybody. Um, and just think about yourself now, like how you are today versus how you were as a small child, how your living environment has changed, how your relationships have changed, your viewpoints have changed, body, you know, so much stuff has changed, right?
I find it funny that Buddhism is like not a very good easy thing to sell. You know, you're like,
You're gonna die, and everything's changing.
Your idea of reality probably isn't completely accurate, causing you to suffer. Okay.
There's a Zen master, Song Sunim, who said, he would walk around just saying, soon dead, to people.
That's a bummer.
Soon dead, so, do it now.
Kind of goth.
Get with the program now, right? Yeah. So that's one, we have a resistance to change on one hand, but then some people have a clinging type personality. They cling to new experiences, they cling to pleasure. And some people can be addicted to change and have the opposite relationship with change, right?
Attached to change.
Where they're constantly seeking change and getting bored easily. This one girl that I worked with at the recovery center, she was incredibly anxious. So I taught her all these meditation techniques and relaxation techniques to learn how to relax. So her anxiety died down, and then she's like, I'm bored. I can't stand this. I'm so bored. So, I was like, well, you're screwed no matter what, aren't you? You finally get peaceful.
She's suffering because she's lacking suffering.
So you finally get peaceful, and now you're bored, right? But that's the nature of the human mind. It's constantly seeking something else, too. As soon as it gets peaceful, it's like, this is it, Whereas I remember when I was meditating, going on retreats, I'd finally feel peaceful, and I'd be like, this is it? Like, what else? Should I go read a book? Maybe I'll go to the library here. I'll go for a walk. I was looking for some kind of stimulation. I'm like, wow, you're peaceful, Ronya. Enjoy the peacefulness. I was like, oh yeah, I'm peaceful. Okay, enjoy the peacefulness. But we can get addicted to change, especially from being in an overstimulated world where there's constant, go, 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 go. And then we sit down, we're anxious, and we're like, oh, I need to rest. We fall asleep. Eventually, we're going to get bored because we want change too. So there's a part of us that needs that creative, juices flowing. We need to be creative beings. We can't just sit probably on a stump for 7 years and not do anything, right? Yeah. But look at our relationship to change. Are we seeking and addicted to change? I knew a guy who could not stay in the same city for more than a month for very long. He traveled all over the world. He could tell you about any city in the world, and he found a way to travel really cheaply and live with people. He was doing couch surfing and all kinds of creative ways of traveling the world because he couldn't stand to be in one place for very long. He was addicted to change. Yeah. So both ends of the spectrum are unhealthy relationships to change. So we're trying to find a middle path with change, where we're like, oh, okay, I'm resisting change now. Now change would actually be a good thing right now. There's a creative desire to create something here. Yeah, so it takes wisdom, it takes insight, it takes mindfulness to know when that's needed. Here's Lao Tzu. Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them, that only create sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. It's easy to say when things are going good, right? Yeah, and when everything's going good, but right now we have climate change, we have Ukraine's crisis going on, we have poor people in Australia. One of my students today said she hasn't been showing up in some of my groups because their city drowned in water, and a lot of people that she knows in Australia are homeless now. She hasn't had internet for a couple weeks from all the rain that they've had there. Anyhow, so it's easy to embrace change when everything's going good, but when we hear these things, it's harder to embrace change, right? And what's our choice? It's reality. Is it not reality? So our choice is to resist it, hate it, lament it, or accept it and say, okay, not preferred, but this is the way it is now, right? Um, yeah. So we learn to become, I love you may have seen this cartoon, I say it often, that they showed a Buddha on the top of a surfboard on the tip of this huge wave, surfing in the ocean. And the caption said, the waves never quit coming, but you become a better surfer, right? And that's kind of what it's like in our practice. The waves never quit coming. We just learn to surf with it, to be fluid, to be flexible, to be adapting, to be with our sorrow when we're lamenting change and when we're grieving losses, because losses happen. They're a natural part of life. Um, and they're a natural part of life, right? So my parents are still alive. I love them. I spend time with them, but I know that they're already gone too. Do you know what I mean? Part of me knows they're already gone. That's what, and knowing that has me really make sure that I spend quality time with them because I know that our time is limited. Because I embrace change, I understand the law of impermanence. Yeah. This is Albert Hubbard. The secret of success is this: there is no secret of success. Life is just one damn thing after another. uh, yeah. But I think that from a karmic standpoint, we can look back and see that when we embrace change, we are changed. When we embrace whatever's happening in the moment, then we allow whatever's happening in the moment to wash away all that is not who we are, right? Uh, the bumps and the bruises and the tears and the pain, uh, they wash away everything that I thought I was that I'm not. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so in that way, change is a Michelangelo creating a beautiful sculpture and chipping away everything of who we're not and showing the masterpiece of who we actually are, right? And when we can see change in that way, then it's much easier to embrace change. It's much easier to say, oh, yeah, that wasn't who I was. Okay, I get to let go of that. I was clinging to that. Um, so, seeing change as the only constant is our practice, embracing change when it happens, and seeing what we can learn from change as it washes away. We're learning more about ourselves and one another and connecting to that which is who we really are, right? Um, the Buddha taught that anicca, impermanence, is one of the pathways to awakening. And I know that you can, if you just embraced anicca, impermanence as your practice every day, you can use that as your doorway to awakening. And to do that, you would just go through the day looking for everything that's constantly changing. Oh, that's changed. Oh, it's different. Okay, that just went away. That car was here, now it's gone. Right? Um, yeah, and to celebrate change too. You know, as the natural flow of life. Uh, yeah. And once we can be with change, we're awake, we're free, and we're going with the rise and fall of experience. And we realize that we're not separate from anything else. We are the rise and fall of changing experience. We're in this amazing dance with the universe, with all of life. We're not separate from it. We're part of it, right? Stop fighting change, and then we're just like, whoa, going on this wild ride with everyone and everything else. Yeah. So thank you for listening to my talk on change. And I'll stop the recording.